Hello, I'm Rue, and this is Rue in the Books, and welcome back to another video. Today, I plan to talk about The Devils by Abercrombie. So, I'm going to split this video into several chunks: plot, characters, action, humor, and the cons, what I thought could have been improved about the book. So the first section is going to be about plot. So the plot follows Princess Alexia and a cast of characters, the Devils, as they try to make their way to Troy. So the starting area is the Holy City, and it's where all of the Devils are kind of locked up or just hanging out. And so the Princess Alexia is going to Troy to become the new empress because the old one died, and it sparked a civil war within the Europe. So and all the descendants of the all the other descendants of the previous empress want to lay their claim to the serpent throne. So throughout their journey, the Devils are ambushed multiple times by these different factions who want to take them out as the biggest competitor for the throne. And it's the Devils' job to come out on top despite the odds. So, based on what I've just said, I want to take a moment to say that the way that the book is set up, it feels very anime. It's got this kind of like monster of the week setup to it, where on their journey they're constantly ambushed by people trying to take them out, and it feels very like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders, just minus the stands. Um, so and to keep things from going stale, Joe Abercrombie does kind of throughout the book throw in some plot twists to keep things fresh. So if you do read this and you start getting a bit bored, things are getting a bit too formulaic, worry not. There are some plot twists which will keep you hooked. So the next section I would like to talk about, as I already mentioned, is the characters. If you would like to not know anything about the characters, you can skip ahead. I'll put a timestamp as to where you can skip to, because because Joe Abercrombie's work is so character focused. If you'd like to not know anything, just so it's all fresh for when you read it, then yeah, you can go ahead and do that. So the cast of characters in the Devils are a massive breath of fresh air. The reason I think this is because um, it's kind of like if Joe Abercrombie wrote a D&D campaign, he has all of these kind of preset like character builds, but he uh, turns that completely on its head by taking the characters in a um, much more unique direction. I wasn't like super engrossed in the book for maybe the first couple of chapters, but the scene where Joe finally introduces the Devils, and they kind of talk to Brother Diaz, that's when I was just hooked like that, and I knew that I was going to absolutely love the book. And pretty much straight after their introduction, it goes on to the journey part. So there's not much dilly dallying going on. It goes straight into that, and Joe wastes no time. So there's a few devils. There's Alex, Brother Diaz, Baron Ricard, Vigor, Baptiste, Sonny, Balthazar, and Jacob of Thorn. I'm going to go through them one by one and just talk a little bit about them. So Alex is kind of introduced as a street thief at the start of the book, and she's very down on her luck. Things are going pretty badly for her. She's about to be enslaved or tortured or killed. And when she's saved by a knight in shining armor who says, "Hey, look, you're actually the princess. If you come with me, we can make an empress out of you, and it'll be a whale of a time." So her main job in this book is kind of just not to die. She's like one of the least special out of the whole cast. So she doesn't have any incredible powers, but Joe does a good job of writing some good character progression throughout the book for her. So she starts by being very dubious and going along with it because she was in a pretty precarious situation. But and she claims that she's going to basically run away from this journey the first moment she gets. But as the book kind of progresses, her mindset changes on this. She begins liking all the other devils, and the dynamics between them change, and she musters up the courage to say, "Okay, I'm going to stick this through." And that moment was very endearing, and I enjoyed it a lot. The next character I'd like to talk about, another one of the devils, is Brother Diaz. His story is a pretty interesting one. Um, he became a monk for reasons I shall not disclose. Um, and it was more to do with necessity than want. I don't think he pictured his life that he'd become a monk, but hey, you got to do what you got to do, right? Compared to the everyone else in the cast, he also doesn't have any special powers. So his job is like Alex, just to survive. But he's also got the extra authority of controlling the devils. There was like a papal binding where the Pope used the power of God to basically kind of entrap them and make them have to stick this journey through to the end. And so he's able to basically boss them around and tell them what to do. He doesn't abuse his power, but he does what's necessary. Yeah, so his word is the law in this situation. And yeah, he lands himself in some very sticky situations throughout the book, a lot of them, in fact. And yeah, the outcomes are very hilarious. There's not too much to say on Brother Diaz. He's one of the more kind of plain characters, but he's fun either way. He's got a good backstory, and just his moments in the book are really really good. I enjoy them a lot. The next one I want to talk about is Baron Rickard, the vampire. So when we first meet him, he's like rotting in his cell in the holy city, and he's literally just like pure wrinkles. He's like hunched over and like just can't really do much. He keeps complaining about his back and all that kind of thing, very much like a Glockter from First Law. And yeah, because he's like this because he's not been able to consume any blood in a very long time because he's just been in this jail cell. And so, if the Devils is a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, then Baron Rickard has just fully maxed out charisma. Like out of all the characters, he's the one that probably sees the least amount of action, just because he's able to just like riz everyone up. If this book was also just a Fallout game, he's always using the dialogue option to prevent bad things from happening, prevent further escalations of stuff. Um, yeah, and he gets what he wants in just the most ridiculous ways. He's kind of got this script he goes through, and he wants to kind of enamor people, and it does a hell of a job. It's really funny. Um, and just my personal thoughts is that based on what is mentioned of his backstory, he's probably seen a lot of combat back in the days, and he's probably learned that talking his way out of things leads to less bad things happening to people that he cares about and whatnot. So he uses his skill set to avoid conflict where he can in the modern day because he's pretty ancient. Um, so now we get to Vigor the werewolf. Personally, I think Vigor is my favorite devil. Um, she tries to keep the wolf locked up unless it's absolutely necessary because when she goes into wolf mode, she loses all control. Like it's like she goes to sleep and the wolf comes out. Um, she has a lot of like just absolutely bonkers lines throughout the books. based on the fact that she's like shackled to her primitive desires. It's just all about eating and fornicating with her. Um, I think she's probably one of the kind of, at a base level, the most simple characters, but she still has a lot of depth and has some very, very tender moments throughout the book. Um, Her debut in the book, when we finally actually see her do something, is probably one of, for me, the coolest scenes in the book. It's written. She's written very much kind of like Logan is in First Law, but like a female version of that. Um, she also has a pretty sad backstory where she constantly kind of thinks about her mother. She's like a kind of like a Swedish, like Viking type character, and she just wants to do her mother proud, but she constantly goes back to like how she's been verbally abused by her mum and kind of painted to be the villain, and she kind of owns it. She's just absolutely awesome. Like her action scenes are so cool, and her like dialogue with the other characters, what she talks, is just very tender or crude and funny. Like she's just got everything you'd want in a Joe Abercrombie character. So now I'm going to talk about Baptiste, the ex-pirate. She's probably one of the more plain characters, just based on the fact that she doesn't have any like remarkable powers. But she is one hell of a clout chaser. If you have a story about how you met like a celebrity, or there's like just something about you, she is always gonna one up you. She's got all these crazy stories and loads of crazy connections. And if you find yourself in a spot of bother, she is more than willing to come help you out. So she's always going to stand in your corner and be a real one for that. Yeah, so there's also the elf, Sunny. Uh, Sunny is one of the most important characters, I think, just in terms of the team composition. I wasn't expecting her to be so awesome. So what her power is when she holds her breath, she can go invisible. And so when you think about that kind of power, you imagine, oh, she's going to be like an assassin, right? Small, agile, uh, gets behind someone, like holds her breath, walks up to someone and stabs them in the back. Well, nope. Her personal mantra is that if she starts stabbing people, she'll be stabbed herself and meet her demise sooner rather than later. So she does a lot of just kind of little things here and there to help out everyone else uh, that's in the Devils. Just like messing up opponents' weapons if they've got crossbows, or tripping people up, just doing little tiny things. She's like a support, like a bard or a paladin, but she can go invisible. Um, Throughout the book, she has some of the biggest influence in how stuff plays out just because of her supporting. And I feel like she's got a really, really sad backstory. She was kind of like a freak at a circus because because she's an elf. She's like an easy target. People just love to hate on that because of the way that elves are kind of painted in the story. They're kind of like seen to be well, not cannibals, seen to eat humans, and they want to just like lead crusades and just exterminate civilization. She also has just some amazing tender moments, especially with Alex. They end up forming a very tight bond throughout, and it's just very endearing. Next up is the Necromancer, Balthazar, who has a very long name, which I already can't remember because it's just too bloody long. He has, I think, the most genuine reaction to kind of being entrapped, enslaved in this with this papal binding, um, and becoming one of the devils. So he's a necromancer, the third best necromancer in all of Europe, and with such intellect, he does what he can to try and break out, and it's kind of like a bit of a recurring gag. Um, so I feel like true necromancy isn't used that much in fantasy, at least from what I've read. I've not really read any necromancer stories. or at least it doesn't come up in like high fantasy and that those kinds of genres that often. But it leads to some very wacky, ridiculous, over the top scenes. When he's plotting something like that, it's always bound to be a good time. Yeah, and out of all the characters, he's by far the cockiest, at least from the devil. Some of the villains also are kind of quite cocky, but yeah. And now the final devil, Jacob of Thorn. I don't really want to spoil what his ability is because it's quite important. But what I will say is, if this book is One Piece, then he is Luffy. He is the guy, the big man. He's quite a stickler when it comes to his oaths. He's like this kind of just pretty standard knight kind of character. Tries to do what he thinks is right. Listens to the leadership. He's seen and done all of the fight battling, and yeah, I definitely wouldn't want him as an enemy. So now that I've kind of given an overview on all of the main cast, I just want to touch on the dynamics between the characters. Joe has done an absolutely incredible job of having each devil have a very unique way in which they interact with each character. So, for example, the way that Balthazar interacts with Alex is very different to the way that Balthazar interacts with Vigor or Sunny. And each relationship is kind of based on how long they've known each other, the personalities of the characters, and it makes Joe's character work in this book have a lot of depth and definitely not feel shallow. It was just really, really well done. Um, and all of the devils have their own kind of like defining character moment. They all have a really, really cool part in the book. So if you have a favorite and that moment hasn't come up, then just be ready and enjoy the ride. So this section here is about the action. That's another one of the kind of defining features of Joe Abercrombie's work. Obviously, there's the characters, the humor, and the action. So what I think about the action in this book is that it's very easy to follow. In a lot of fantasy, there's these huge battles with hundreds of people fighting another hundred of people or more. And while the while the environments of the battles can be very, very chaotic, he does a great way of he has a great way of kind of splitting the characters up where they fight just maybe one or two people at a time. So it makes it much easier to follow and not get overwhelmed. Um, for me, the best action scenes are the ones involving either Jacob or Balthazar or Vigor. Jacob, as already mentioned, is kind of like the sword and shield kind of guy. Balthazar has the kind of necromancy powers where he'll, if there's any like severed hands or anything, he can make use of them, or like skeletons or corpses, he can make use of them. And Vigor, the werewolf, um, Vigor's like ready to basically take on whoever uh, presents themselves to be a nuisance, both in her human and her werewolf forms. In her werewolf form, the writing style really changes for the action. It's really cool. It's like very primitive um, and primal. Um, Following Sunny in the battle scenes is also such a treat because she kind of min maxes her breath because she can only be invisible when she's holding her breath. Um, in fantasy and action books, there are a lot of cannon fodder, people who just serve to like get skewered, sliced, decapitated, severed, you know, a bit of gore. In this book, the fodder are far more interesting. So the Empress, she performed these experiments to figure out the nature of the soul, and so she basically made chimeras by fusing a human soul with an animal. So I've not really seen chimeras being used before in fantasy books. So it's really, really interesting to see, and it allows them to have a lot more quirks and make them more of a nuisance when they're fighting the characters. Um, and it's very interesting to see how the reactions of the devils are on these chimeras, and it's just so fun. Despite having such a powerful cast, the fights are never easy. They always break themselves. They always break out in such a way that the devils are at a massive disadvantage. And so, like, if it's like an NBA game, they start like 40 points down and have to do everything in their power to tie things back up and then get the clutch win. Yeah, so the physical action is written well, easy to follow, it's fun, it's exciting. There's just a lot going on. The magic stuff is also really interesting to follow. It's kind of like a soft magic system, so you don't have to think too hard about anything. It's just kind of basic elemental magic and necromancy. Um, and yeah, it's a fun time. So the next section here is humor. There's not too much to touch upon because there's only so much you can talk about humor without giving the jokes away. Um, as all Joe Abercrombie fans know, he's just the absolute goat of writing jokes and little witty, funny one-liners when things are absolutely bleak. I feel like the jokes in this book came on much more frequently than in First Law. Like every few pages, there'd just be something stupid going on. And if that's what you seek, then this book is definitely for you and you'll enjoy it. The humor is very crude. Expect lots of toilet humor, sexual jokes, and the odd bit of slapstick. I'd like to quickly just touch on something that I didn't enjoy about the book. So, in The Devils, Joe writes weird flashbacks or internal dialogue or time skips without preparing the reader for them, which for me, it took me out of it and broke immersion. Some of these scenes kind of just felt really out of place and had me just a bit confused. I feel like if Joe made it clearer what was going on before these scenes, it might have been more bearable. Like when you read a book, a character could start having a dream sequence without mentioning that the character's gone to sleep, and for a few lines, you're like, "What the hell is going on?" That happened a few times in this book, and it just took me a little bit out of it. And yeah, as I said, just I was just a bit confused by it. That's really my only gripe with it. I think other than that, it was just everything else is fantastic about it. So overall, I think this is an absolutely fantastic new book by Joe Abercrombie. If more books come out in this series, I'd definitely be interested in writing them. I feel like it takes itself a bit less seriously than something like First Law and more of the First Law universe books, and it's detached enough that um, it's formulaic enough that you could write another 4 or 5 books like this, and it just by making it fun and silly and stupid, it'd be amazing and great to just keep reading. Um, as I mentioned, the only real downside I had to this book was the way that I was just brought out of things at weird times sometimes without prior explanation, and it just had me confused. So overall, absolutely amazing book, banger, absolute banger. I rate it 4 stars out of 5. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you had a nice beverage with you to drink while watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and write down in the comments below if there was anything, if there's anything you agreed with or disagreed with, anything that you found interesting that I didn't mention, and if there's let me know what you're reading as well. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. This has been Rue with the books, and take care now. Bye.